It's always a
Um,
pleasure to have you.
as a Marine Corps veteran, someone who served, this has been a challenge for us to see over the last year or so. The president consistently putting the military into the streets or attempting to put the military into the streets. We saw it with various National Guard deployments. Courts have pushed back on a lot of those deployments, the federalization of guard forces, but the president has been, testing the legal boundaries of what we accept in America and frankly, what society will accept. But the threat to use the Insurrection Act is a whole different ball of wax. The Insurrection Act is an extraordinary power. It provides the president with the exceptional ability to suspend or avoid posse comitatus, which is a law we have in the United States that prevents the military from doing civilian police work. So it would
Passed
ostensibly,
by Republicans in the wake of the Civil War, but yeah, never mind.
uh,
Just for
a
historical
different
perspective.
Republicans.
Yeah, yeah.
But we will, but it's one of the most extreme domestic authorities available to the president. And over the last 2 centuries of American history, it's been used infrequently as an extraordinary response to severe domestic disorder or a failure of states to enforce federal laws, like we saw in the civil rights era. But what's remained constant about its use is that it's treated as an extraordinary power. It's not something that we're just going to deploy willy nilly when the president doesn't like the politics of a protest. And that is unfortunately what we're seeing in Minnesota. So, it's a really dangerous escalation. It's not about bringing peace. Just as the federalization of the National Guard in Portland, Chicago, and Los Angeles was an escalation, done against the wishes of local law enforcement and local leaders, this is extraordinarily inflammatory and should concern every American.
Well, I'm going to just read from your statement that you issued. The president's threat to invoke the Insurrection Act in Minnesota is not about restoring calm or keeping people safe. It is part of a pattern of provocation, escalation, and threats of force designed to justify using the military against Americans. And that's the point I have heard from the White House saying that the military supports what we're doing because it's keeping order, and that the people that are doing this are immune from prosecution because they're merely following the law. But I've covered law enforcement and the military for 4 decades. And I have this again looks to me like a military incursion and not a policing effort, which places us all in jeopardy. Because if you're on a seek and destroy mission as a member of the military, you know well that you're there to neutralize targets, and you're not pulling up and going, hey, I don't know if you're a member of of my opponents or not, but gosh, can you pull over to the side of the road? You're assuming that people are the enemy and you're neutralizing targets, which you have to do to survive. To me, you tell me, you have the military experience. Are the actions of ICE those of a police department or are those of a paramilitary organization? Your
I mean,
opinion.
there are definitely not conducting law enforcement actions, smashing the windows of people sitting in parked cars, taking, shooting at civilians, kidnapping people, throwing them in unmarked vehicles, entering homes without judicial warrants. Like none of that is law enforcement. And that I want to be clear that so far the president has not invoked the Insurrection Act. We haven't seen actually National Guard in the streets yet of Minnesota, and hopefully we will not, or active duty military. But the ICE agents are wearing paramilitary uniforms. They are intentionally in military fatigues with their faces covered. And so for the average citizen or civilian who is encountering these folks, they
Right.
look like the military. They're not necessarily able to draw the distinction. But they're acting with very little training. We've all read the stories about the incentive bonuses. The fact that there was a story that broke yesterday of an Afghanistan war veteran who went to an ICE recruiting fair just to see what it was like and ended up getting a job offer with no background check, nothing. And they had written extensively, like very anti-ICE pieces. So a quick like Google search could have pulled that up, but they got offered a job. So that tells you, what kind of background checks are happening with these folks. when President Trump told people the Proud Boys to, stand by, this is the opportunity they were looking for, to go out and smash heads and do it with absolute impunity. I mean, you had the Secretary Noem today saying that American citizens should be prepared to carry around their citizenship documents. I mean, that is not what a free and fair society looks like. That is not the America or the values of freedom that I served to protect and defend.